Good morning, everybody, and happy Valentine's Day. And sadly, tomorrow is 8 months since Summer disappeared. We have a very special lady backstage that is nice enough to come up. She's retired FBI, Jennifer Coffendaffer. I hope I said her name right. And she's going to come up and answer our questions, what she can answer. And it's a big day, and we're really excited to have her. So I'm going to tell a few people hi. Gaelic Girl was the first one in. Superior Dreams brought the coffee. Katie Bird, good morning. Kayla, good morning. Preschool Granny, good morning. Hello, Judy. Hope everyone's doing good. Survived the Super Bowl. I thought it was great. I fell asleep after halftime because, I'm wild like that. You give me a belly full of enchiladas and some guacamole, and I'm not going to make it too far. Unheard, not forgotten. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. So the show's going to run about an hour. So usually I go through some comments and stuff like that, but I want to have as much time to talk to Jennifer as possible. Hello, Holly Beans. Hello, Clark. So I'm going to bring up Kevin B real quick, and then we're going to see how his weekend was, and then bring up our guest. Hello, Kevin.
Good morning, Brooks. How are you?
Doing swell. Really excited about today's show.
Oh, I'm over the moon about it. Yeah, Jennifer, she is definitely awesome, and we've been looking forward to this. This is going to be really good, I think. Hopefully, the some questions will be answered. Maybe we'll just see how it goes. But I just want to say hello to everybody that's here today. I am so glad you're here. I want to say hello to my sister, and yeah, I'm so excited, and I want thank Jennifer for doing this. This is going to be good.
This is going to be great. So without further ado, let's bring her up. Good morning, Jennifer.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So how was your weekend? Did you do anything for Valentine's Day, Super Bowl, or anything like that?
Nothing yet. I did get a beautiful dozen long stem roses. So I was very happy. Stuck those in water and managed to cut my finger as I was slicing them open to receive the water. But other than that, it started out a very good Valentine's Day. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what happens with me when I get flowers. I got flowers too, and I did basically the exact same thing.
It's good to have them. They're so beautiful and they smell good.
They smell great. They do. Well, thank you so much for coming up here and doing this show. I know you are an extremely, extremely busy lady. We have a great community, a great chat. Everyone's, respectful and everything like that. So if you see anything in the chat that you want to answer, tell me and I'll put it up.
All right. Sounds great.
So before we get started, tell us about you. So you're retired FBI.
Yes, I started my career back in 1990 and primarily worked Colombian drug trafficking networks for the first 5 years, then worked Mexican drug trafficking networks, organized crime and violent crime my whole career. I then went to counterterrorism after 9/11 happened and worked crime aboard aircraft type matters and counterterrorism. And then when the gang situation started to get out of control, I went and was embedded with the Fort Worth Police Department and worked gangs for about 5-6 years. And then after that, somebody had to do this. I was transferred to the U.S. Virgin Islands and worked over there, ran the Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John before going to Washington, D.C. to work in the weapons of mass destruction, counterproliferation, nuclear arena, and then worked on Director Comey's personal protection detail. Then came to Florida to retire.
Wow. And wow, in the Virgin Islands. How did you land that gig? I'm sure you were kicking and screaming.
Right. Yeah. No, I put in for it. I was thrilled to get it and spent about 4 years there. and loved it. It was great. It was one of my favorite assignments, definitely.
It would be mine too, just to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a resume.
I know, very impressive.
Very.
Thank you. Thank you. Great years.
So I've watched all your work on Summer Wells, Brian Enton's as well.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely amazing. I anytime people are covering, any missing child's case, but if they were talking about Summer Wells, I'm over the moon elated. It seems like it's more social media that covers missing children anymore than the mainstream media. So for you guys to step out like that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I have to say, when I first got the call about doing the analytical work for News Nation on the Gabby Petito case, I was sort of hesitant. Really, what I do for a living is expert witness work behind the scenes, and then gather the information from cases that have happened and provide my opinions regarding those. So this was definitely a little different for me, but I definitely was so caught up in the Gabby Petito case from a personal standpoint, from really every standpoint. And it elevated me, I think, to go in the direction of really trying to be an advocate in every way I possibly can for missing children. And that is something that I will never, leave that arena. And also domestic violence victims, both.
Good for you. And I am the exact same way.
Yeah. And Brian is too. Brian's great. We formed such a great friendship. Mm-hmm. And so it's been great to work on, of course, all these other cases together as well. We communicate about them, and he's great.
We actually just showed his interview last week where he went into the CPS office about Harmony Montgomery.
Yes.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
I think viewers, and I could be wrong, but I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned as a viewer, I want to see the rawness. I want to see some personality and feeling and passion toward these reports that people do. And I think it's the wave of the future. It's not to be stoic and to say what you're supposed to say. You should be saying what you believe and what your conviction is.
And that's why I like how you guys do it, because it is raw and it gets people's attention, and it's great. I can't think of another adjective. It's just absolutely wonderful work you guys do.
Thank you. I really think it's going to be what reporting becomes in the future. I think, I've watched so many commentators or analysts, and they seem to be saying what they're supposed to be saying. Do you know what I mean? Or they just won't comment. Well, I really can't comment. Or I like this one where they say sort of both answers, and so they really give you no answer. I think it's important that people analyze the facts as they have before them and give their opinion as to what the facts tell them. They have years of experience. I have 28 years of federal law enforcement experience. I should be able to draw some conclusions from the facts that are out there, with that caveat, right? Because law enforcement has so much more than the rest of us.
Yep, and we're going to talk about that as well. Sorry, I was making myself a note, because if I don't, I'll forget. So when you heard about the Summer Wells case, what was the first red flag that jumped out at you?
So when I first heard about Summer Wells, the first thing I do whenever I get information, people often DM me. They reach out to me about dozens of missing children daily, different cases that they'd like, to take a look at. When Summer Wells came through and I started researching that case, and really looking into the facts surrounding that case, I realized that the facts did not add up.
Mhm.
And the facts as put forth by the individuals that had last seen her, those facts didn't add up. There was so much available to look at with all the different interviews that both Candace and Dawn have done, that Hunter's done, that other people that are involved in the case have done, that there's a lot to break down. There's a lot to look at. But my initial thought was this poor little innocent, wonderful girl, and what really has happened to her.
That's, yeah. And like I said, tomorrow's 8 months and we're asking the same questions.
Mhm.
What did you think about the conflicting stories? So the 911 call, first of all, they said she was 4.
Mm.
Then they say that Candace was taking a walk or a run and she came back and 10 minutes later Summer was gone. That story soon changed to she was doing dishes and Summer walked out the door, to the planting flowers story. What did you make of all that?
Well, anytime I see, and this is the number one red flag with this story, anytime I see changes of stories of witnesses involved in a case, it's a red flag to me that the truth is not coming out.
Mhm.
The truth never ever changes. It is what it is. And when you see changes of facts like this tells me that they're cognitively putting together some sort of story. Now I caveat this by saying that I don't believe necessarily that Dawn or Candace murdered Summer, but I do have some belief that a horrible accident of some sort could have taken place and that accident was covered up. This story reminds me so much of a case I personally had, and where that was the situation. It also could be that some of the individuals that the Wells were associated with also possibly could have done something to or with Summer. Those are my two main takeaways with what could have happened to this poor little girl.
And whatever it is, it's beyond tragic.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of, and what do you think that the police, if they're considering that both Dawn and Candace and the grandmother, Grandis,
Mm-hmm.
have abusive pasts towards children?
They do. It's Dawn's is particularly concerning. I know many of your viewers, and I know, of course, both of you have done the research and listened to the tapes, which takes hours, by the way,
Mhm.
of all the tape recordings of the recordings of Dawn with his sister. I think was very telling to me. The admissions that were made about his what he did to his other little sister, to friends. And some people might say, there's no way we should take his past behaviors and apply them to what has happened with Summer. But I would beg to differ with that philosophy, because criminals have patterns. It's not saying that just because you've done a crime that you're always going to do crimes, but it is saying that there is a pattern of recklessness and a pattern of abuse that has continued clear up through this story. I've seen it on live TV stream through Don Wells, how he speaks to Candace, what's happening in that home. Back in 2020, the report that was filed by Candace, where she states he's dangerous to me, he's dangerous to the children. She took out a restraining order. But that's just one incident. It just spans decades of how Don Wells has behaved toward children and toward women. And that doesn't just go away.
No, and they had a recent domestic at the house where the police were called. And they have a very, very volatile, toxic relationship. You know, they're extremely abusive to each other. And like the reports on how they've treated the children are sickening. Now, Clark had a question. What do you think is the holdup for the DA to put neglect charges on them?
You know, from the onset of this case, of course, the children were removed quite quickly as soon as the investigation was concluded in terms of their environment and so forth. And I can't give an answer to that because it makes absolutely no sense to me. Probable cause was achieved to the point that the state felt comfortable that they were legally comfortable in removing 3 children from their biological parents. This is not an easy feat, I can tell you, having dealt with many situations where the children probably should have been taken away and weren't. I can think of a wiretap situation where we were on a wiretap and the main subject, his wife was at home and she relentlessly beat her son. We could hear it. The screams, the beating.
Oh, that's terrible.
Horrible. I can't even express listening to it. And of course, obviously called and got somebody out there. But sadly, that child was never removed. That child was never removed. So it takes a lot. My point is that was a Texas situation. It takes a lot to remove a child. So that tells you, in my opinion, the degree to which their probable cause existed. And if probable cause exists to remove a child, probable cause exists that neglect, child endangerment possibly, and other charges would be feasible in this situation. So I do not know why the state attorney is not charged, or the DA.
And what do you make out of Dawn saying, and a lot of people keep saying, why aren't there charges? Why aren't there charges? Why aren't there charges? And I mean, I guess the easy answer is because they haven't found Summer's body.
Summer's body isn't a necessity to charge.
Okay.
It's a good thing. It would be good. And let's hope Summer, you know, for all these children, I hold out hope. I do hold out hope that somehow she is alive. I never want to, because I'm not 100% sure that she's not with us. So I like to hold out hope, but my hope is small in this case. Part of the reason it's small is because of Don Wells's words himself, where he essentially said he thought she was dead. This is very, very early on.
Yes.
And that he would see her in the resurrection and things along. This was right away in his first, I think the second interview, where Candace was there also. And Candace was, in my opinion, under the influence during that interview, if you'll recall.
Oh, she certainly was.
And Don was mostly doing the talking, but he had just resigned himself that, the search was not for Summer being alive. And that spoke volumes to me, how he's always spoken to her in the past. So there's a lot to do with Don that concerns me of a factual nature. One of the facts is I was reviewing an interview he did. And in that interview, he specifically said he went downstairs to check on Summer, not Candace. He said he went downstairs to check on Summer and she wasn't gone, or she wasn't there. She was gone, and that the door was unlocked.
He has placed himself at the house many times, but then on the other hand, claims he was at work. When he did the interview with Brian Enton, he made a slip and he said, like, somebody abducted her. I mean, the way that Dawn says it, when we weren't paying attention.
He has made so many slips, and these are the types of slips that occur in my experience when I would interview a witness, when I would interview a subject, when they weren't telling the truth. Mm-hmm. And the reason is the truth does not change, but their lies will continue to change because they have to try to remember what they've said. And in the back of their mind, they know the truth. And so sometimes it squeaks out. Like when he said, I went downstairs to check on her and she was gone. That was the first time I had heard those words out of his mouth. But he has been very contradictory about where he was, when he was there. The whole time frame is very suspect in terms of what happened after they got back from the water hole and when they finally called 911.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because there was a question in chat. What do you make of the timeline? All of the errands run throughout the day. The fact that they had Summer with them instead of her staying home. Then we have the gap from when they drop off Hunter, they get home, and she calls 911.
So the biggest gap that I have an issue with is after they drop off Hunter. Mm-hmm. You know, that whole gap, the whole running errands and, getting the medication and going by the watering hole. All of that is, I see the issue. It is disconcerting from the standpoint of all of that has changed in terms of timing, in terms of how long she spent, as an example, the supermarket run, which I think she said at one point was 5 minutes. Well, we know it's impossible for what she gathered and everything for that to be 5 minutes. The whole timing is suspect to me, but I believe the police know an exact timeline because they have multiple cell phones, multiple information regarding, I'm hoping, cameras in that town, at least to some degree, as to when they were at specific places. But I think the cell phones are going to be able to paint a pretty true timeline of when they were at different places.
Oh, absolutely. And when they got home, just like one thing I've never understood is when Candace said she had to use her mother's phone to call 911.
Right. And isn't there was some mention of the cell service or something, right? Wasn't that her excuse?
But that makes no sense. I mean, she had just posted to Facebook.
No, exactly. So much makes no sense. But what it does make sense is for this, that they're not telling the truth. That's everything in this whole case makes sense in one regard. And it tells me they are not telling the truth.
They're not telling the truth. And so I didn't mean to skip around, but when I had said, they don't have Summer's body, and yeah, we always hold out hope. We always hold out hope in these cases. One of the last things that Don said before he went to jail is not related to Summer. Some people think it is. It's not. He said they have no body and no evidence.
Well, again, the body is not crucial. Well, let me say this. It's very important. They want to have a body so they can prove if she is dead, the cause of that death. And that can lead them to the proper facts to be able to put the case on who their suspects are. However, you can make a case, and it has been done many, many, many times without a body. But I will say this also. What I have seen from this case, in my opinion, is we have a prosecutor that is not an aggressive prosecutor. Let me say why I say that.
Okay.
I say that because of the situation involving the boys and the fact that no charges were levied. When I see that there were no charges levied with what I see as probable cause that they suffered from neglect, I cannot fathom as to why they haven't been charged. But some prosecutors, I call them the prosecutors that want a whale in a bucket. They do not want cases that that are not in their view. Even if it is in their view, they believe the person's guilt. They struggle with whether they can prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, it's understandable. The prosecutor does not want to risk not being able to prosecute that case in the future if more evidence comes available. So I respect that. But I want to take you to really quickly the Corey Bigsby case, where that case was immediately charged. And it was charged based on charges stemming from leaving his children alone. That was the basis of the charge, really, leaving these children alone on multiple occasions. Well, Summer left those 3 boys alone for hours.
Right.
Summer has given or gave alcohol, and
Candace.
possibly Candace gave, did I say Grandis? Candace gave alcohol to Hunter on the trip to the swimming hole. I'm not even sure that's been denied by Candace. I saw it was denied by Candace, and she's kind of back and forth. But Hunter admitted to it, so Hunter would be the witness. And why would Hunter lie about that? Because he's admitting to a crime himself, because he's underage. I think he was 15. So I see many small infractions and violations of law that could be prosecutorially gone after, and they're not being sought. Finally, I mean, look at Don Wells, released on his own recognizant after when he was on probation. I mean, that is unusual.
Not only that, he walked out without a license, expired tag, and no insurance, and drove away. How brazen. I couldn't believe that.
Well, again, it just speaks to back to your original question, and you're right, we are ping-ponging a little bit, but back to your original question, could they prosecute without a body? We are looking at right now, a prosecuting team that seems to not even want to prosecute smaller infractions so that perhaps they could put pressure. And when I say pressure, I just mean that right now, Don Wells is incarcerated for possibly 11 months. We'll see if he gets good time and all these other things and is released early, but he's looking at 11 months. This is going to put pressure in this situation because they're separated now. And separation, I've always said, was the key to finding the truth. You know, they have been joined at the during most of their interviews. There's a certain narrative that Don appears to have contrived, you know, that a stranger came up and took Summer. When you think about the probability of that, consider that would mean some random abductor would have to know that she lived there, number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, this random abductor would have to perfectly time it where she would be alone in the basement. Mm-hmm. The abductor would have to sneak back past, I counted one time, I believe, okay, let me say I counted in the neighborhood of 15 dogs in and around that property when I was watching, I think it was Chris McDonough's filming. I mean, there are a lot of dogs that would bark if a stranger came up from the woods on that property. Then they would have to get away with getting out of the house with Summer. So the probability is so low that this was a stranger abduction. In my mind, I'm not even, it accounts for 0.09 of a consideration for me.
And it was the middle of the day. They'd been running around all day long. They would have to know they were home. The boys had been left alone all day long. They didn't take
Right.
the boys. They were there alone. So here you have 2 adults that we know of. Candace and Candace were home, and the 3 boys inside the house. It makes no sense.
And
It
I
makes
just,
sense. Sorry, Kevin.
I didn't mean to cut you guys off. And the other thing is, I've brought it up several times. We've talked about it. Is if Candace went on a walk or a run, why didn't she see anything? That's right there was a huge red flag for me.
That's a good point. But of course, I've heard Candace herself say, I don't walk or run. I'm afraid of those, of the woods. I wouldn't ever go in there. I let my boys go in there, but they had to be properly, I think they had to have a knife and they had to have something else to go in there. So she's contradicted all the stories are contradictions. I don't know what the true story is. None of us know except for the Wells.
And we call it opposite day on here. If they say it, it's the opposite. There's so much deflection. There was a question in here. I put it on the screen for a minute and I took it down, but I wrote it down. What do you think about all the accusations that they have made? False accusations, I mean, in my opinion. I mean, basically take the heat off of themselves.
Well, I think that is to be expected. It's to be expected because they understand that they, in my opinion, still remain to be suspects, at least in knowledge of what happened, suspects in not providing truthful statements regarding what happened. I know a lot has been made regarding the polygraph test that was administered to them. I have a lot of experience with polygraph tests, not as a polygrapher, but as a case agent, asking polygraphs to be done on subjects and witnesses and cases. And I can give you off the top of my head 3 examples of people who passed their polygraph tests but were guilty. Polygraphs cannot be used in a court of law for this very reason. While they can be extremely reliable against people like you and me and everybody sitting in this room, meaning if you aren't struggling from addiction, if you don't have medications in your body, if you are not privy to very specific polygraph techniques that can be used that are well documented on how to pass a polygraph, and if you're not a habitual liar. And typically the ones I've seen pass are true habitual liars, which basically means they start confusing truth from lies. So they really live their life not knowing what truth is from lie. And those people pass polygraphs quite readily. I can tell you I took a polygraph because I wanted to know if it worked. So a guy named Gary Steger, who was considered the best polygrapher at one time, probably in all of Texas, but certainly in the Houston division. Gary, I'm going to give you the Houston division for sure. And so I said, Gary, I want to see if this would really work. So he gave me, I think, 12 numbers and on a sheet of paper. And I threw them in a hat or a bag or something like that. I picked out one of the numbers, threw it back in the bag. And then he said, okay, Jen, this is what we're going to do. I want you to sit there and I want you to go through. I'm going to ask you what number you picked. And each time I want you to say no. And I had picked Well, let's see. So I'll get through this quickly. So he said 1, I said no. 2 said no. 3 said no. 4, 5, 6. And we go through the whole thing through 12. I said no to everyone. He goes, give me number 5, please, out of your pocket. Because I kept back the one and it was number 5. So they work. If
you're telling, if you're
Wow.
a person,
if you're regular, and that's why people who are regular, have very big issues if they're guilty trying to pass. However, I will say I've seen people who are innocent, completely innocent, who have struggled with a polygraph because they're worried about other things. They're worried about things that might have contributed to the crime. I had a mother fail a polygraph twice because she was so guilty about the fact that she felt guilty that the person died because of her negligence. Basically, she left the door open and allowed the child to get out.
Oh, no.
And so in her mind, and in a polygraph examination, you're only asked a couple of questions. You're not asked 15 like I was asked, or 12 like I was asked. You're just asked about 2 questions, other than the baseline questions. How old you are and who are you. Other than that, you're only asked about 2 questions. And, some people become inconclusive if they're innocent, but normal people, if they're guilty, will fail miserably a polygraph test. And those polygraphers can tell right away. They're very, very good at what they do.
So I was reading a couple of questions in chat because a lot of people are very hung up on this polygraph, and I just don't buy it. I'm not saying I don't buy that they didn't pass it. I mean, if that's all it took, then everyone wouldn't still be a suspect.
Well, there's a couple of things on the polygraph too. Have we heard, and maybe I've just missed it, has the TBI said, I know what Dr. Phil said, has the TBI said they've passed?
No. Okay. I have never, and I've been searching and searching and searching. Now, I believe it was Brian Enton that did ask Ronnie Lawson, but his answer that they passed, I don't know, it just wasn't real. He just kind of shook his head, yes.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember. It
wasn't they passed it. But I mean, like I said, everyone is still a suspect. 8 months tomorrow, and they haven't cleared anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean you. That doesn't mean me. That doesn't mean anyone in chat. But Candace, Dawn, they haven't been cleared at all.
Right. That's exactly true. But really quickly, just to put the polygraph to bed. The polygraph is a great investigative tool. I've had people when they said, oh, yes, I'll volunteer to do the polygraph, and then called the polygrapher to come down, set everything up, and they've said, I'm sorry, I'm guilty, I did it. Just the fear of the polygraph and the fact of that they believe it will definitely work and expose them have confessed. So the polygraph is really used as a tool by the polygrapher. It's a huge interview tool. It's a tool to point us in the right direction, but it is not 100%. I can promise you, I can assure you of that.
Well, I'm glad we put that to rest because, like I said, there are many, many people that when they hear polygraph, they think that's it. They didn't do it, but they don't consider that they haven't been cleared. So it can't be 100%. They haven't been cleared.
It's not 100%, and it's not even accepted in any court of law anywhere. And that's why there's too many examples of people who have passed that have been guilty, and people who haven't passed who have not been guilty. So there is no way that the polygraph is, in my opinion, unless the machine is changed even more so to become more conclusive, it's not going to be able to be used as a fact in a court of law.
No, I don't think. I mean, everything I've read about it, they said never. Because I mean, like you were talking about, I mean, people that, like I said, struggle with addiction, they're pathological liars. I mean, they pass it.
Mm-hmm. Those are the two main people that can beat a polygraph. They don't even have to beat it. If you're a pathological liar, you don't have to beat it.
Now, do you think any consideration is put in the fact that also Candace's sister is missing? Because you have to admit, those are the odds of the lottery, to have two people in your family totally disappear without a sight, just vanish.
Right. I have found that very disturbing that has happened. I agree with you that the odds make it very, it's not impossible because it's happened here, but extremely improbable. I don't know how that necessarily helps us find Summer or contributes to the investigation, other than if Grandis, Candace, and Don Wells had anything to do with the initial disappearance of Grandis's daughter, and then had something to do with Candace's or Summer's disappearance. Perhaps they could have used the same idea to hide where both bodies would be. So I'm not saying that, I want to make that clear. I'm just saying that would be the only thing that I think we could glean, that it could be helpful. But I'm certainly not putting that on any of these people. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying it's something to think about, depending on how this case turns out.
No, we're not accusing anybody. I mean, at all. I don't want anybody to think that. It's just hard to ignore the elephant in the room. Tomorrow is 8 months. Everyone is still a suspect. They've blamed everybody and their dog that's been anywhere around that hill. Abusive past, another missing family member. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So we've had a lot of questions pop up here. One is, when Candace was asked to fill in the timeline, she said she was washing clothes. Now, do we really believe she was washing clothes, or was she really washing clothes and, like it was suggested, she was destroying evidence?
I never took it that way. How I've always taken it with Candace's changing of stories is she truly is just not telling the truth. So, flower planting, goes to taking a walk. I mean, there's just so many excuses. Her initial story, and I think I always like to go with the initial story as being at least either A, the initial truth, or B, the initial falsehood. Mm-hmm. And the initial story that she puts forth is that she was only out of that house for seconds. Mm-hmm. By the time she checked the knee brace of Grandis and then went back to the house. Seconds, I think she says. And remember, there's a lot of inconsistent statements too about the locked door. Remember when Chris McDonough went to the door?
Uh-huh. I was hoping you would bring that up. And also when he showed us inside of what looks like, a dungeon, this basement, and you can't see in. So how would you know to abduct Summer if you can't even see in there? But they sell this all the time, that she was downstairs playing by herself in this dark room. They said no one can get in, no one can get out. The windows are like blacked out. How in the world would you even know someone's in there?
Well, I'm not sure if anybody in a law enforcement capacity is believing this is any sort of stranger abduction. I think the possibilities on the table that need to really be explored, and that I would guessing they are exploring, are one, that at the watering hole, she had a true drowning situation. Both Hunter and Candace both say she went under. There's been varying stories as to how long she went under. I mean, I've heard everything from she went under so long that Hunter had to get up and run out there and go get her. I've heard, no, it was just seconds. It's, you know, there's a continuum of what we're to believe. And a dry drowning can result from something like that, where they don't drown initially, but the lungs, not the lungs, actually, I believe it's the bronchial area fill with water and the person ends up dying. Don't hold me to that. I'm not a medical expert, but dry drowning is a real, at least, possibility that should be explored in this situation.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, really rare, but I mean, anything's possible. And like I said, tomorrow is 8 months,
Mm-hmm.
and that to me is just absolutely bizarre that in 8 months we have no one's come across her at all.
Yeah. I mean, that it's very telling, because whoever is responsible for Summer's disappearance has done an incredible job concealing her.
So we've had several questions about trafficking. Could she have been sold?
Well, again, if that occurred, in my opinion, it was by somebody who was connected to that house, to the wells, or the wells. I do not believe this was a stranger abduction. But the wells consorted with a lot of individuals that were in the criminal element involving drug trafficking and other violations. And so those individuals, somebody who knew about Summer Wells being there, could they be involved? Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's definitely something nefarious going on. Okay, so before we start closing down the show, you and I were speaking earlier about this. Okay, so as we know, Candace took her mom's truck that day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always been a lot of, why did Don have the Subaru? Some people are saying Don wanted to have GPS so that he would have an alibi that day. Some are saying, no, she wanted to make sure she wasn't tracked. Well, it's odd that that was the day that she picked up Hunter. What do you make out of the completely and totally inappropriate relationship between Candace and Hunter?
Well, I've explored a lot into that relationship from the interviews that have been conducted, and mostly from the photos. I think photos are very telling about a person's relationship, whether it be friendly, whether it not be friendly. Remember, this is a young boy. This is when I say a young boy, a 15-year-old boy, 14-year-old boy, when they were involved with at least being around each other. And it's certainly concerning from the pictures. There's one picture that I've recently seen where he has no shirt on. They look like they're outside. She has, I believe it's I remember right, was it a swimming suit? I believe. Anyway, that's not the concerning part. The concerning part is how she is sort of laying very near and across him and has her arm strewn around his leg area, high leg area. It's just, for those of us who have children this age, it would never occur on a usual appropriate relationship with one's 14-year-old child's friends to be laying around them in that area. I think Kevin pointed out there's a picture of them in bed with each other. I haven't seen that picture myself, but my point is, is, does that relationship that could have happened contribute to this investigation? And the only piece that makes me think it does possibly contribute is the motive for that truck that you mentioned. Was she trying not to have the GPS so that the fact that she went and picked up Hunter and was around Hunter would be detected by Dawn? That's just a possibility.
Right.
But it's a possibility for why the truck was used. I find it interesting. I think I told you in that photo, if you blow up the photo of Summer that was taken in the rear, you can see a reflection and it appears to be Dawn's truck. I'm not saying 100% sure it's Dawn's truck because it is very hard to make out. I'm hopeful that law enforcement has taken that photo and done what I know the FBI lab can do to determine what exactly is being reflected. Was that barrels, as Candace said, or was it a truck, as Dawn's family say? In any event, that's a crucial piece of fact to find out if he was truly there much earlier than he admits to. And remember, there's been all sorts of information from Dawn that is also extremely conflicting. As we opened the show, we talked about where he said he went down in the basement and she wasn't there. And we can talk about so many other instances with the conflict. So I think the only thing we know for sure, Brooke, is that we don't know what happened, but we know they're not being truthful.
No, they're not being truthful. And sorry to go back to Hunter. I just thought of something. I mean, I have kids, and they're grown now, but when they were teenagers, when obviously when you have a teenager, then you have all their teenage friends over.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't imagine one of my children's friends taking my phone and going through it. Now we know she bought him alcohol. We know she bought vapes. And also the fact that he seems to kind of like be mimicking her story is really odd to me. And it's very off-putting to me that 2 days after Summer went missing, now mind you, her daughter is missing. Summer is missing. She drove to their house to ask them what they said to the TBI. Now, according to Allie, she called the TBI and they wanted to know what she was driving that day. But is that not a huge red flag that you would make a special trip over to their house to ask what they were telling the TBI?
Well, I think that they are so concerned about themselves, and this isn't anything new. Remember what the answer was when they asked Dawn Wells when Summer's birthday was? He had no idea.
They reported her being 4 years old.
And so my point is this is an extremely unusual parent-child relationship. These individuals are, in my opinion, in the throes of major addiction to alcohol minimally. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you have actions that are inexplicable. But consider that if she already knows what happened to Summer, it wouldn't be odd for her to go over there because she would already know.
Yep. That's always been something besides the alcohol, the vapes, and just all the craziness of the day, the unaccounted time, which is about 3 hours. That going over there to their house and asking point blank, this wasn't a phone call or anything. No, she drove over there specifically to ask them what they said to the TBI. I just thought that was, I don't know. I mean, my face about fell off when I heard that. All right. So before we wrap it up, I've kept you almost an hour. I know you said you have an hour, and by the way, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for this. Several people have asked, what are the chances this becomes a cold case?
That is such a great question. And I'm very concerned about that. I think that the good news is this case remains in mainstream media. It remains hugely in social media. And if that remains the situation, I think law enforcement will continue investigative efforts to find this little girl. I think it's so important to keep her name out there, to keep the facts out there. I think it's an important possible shift in the case that Dawn is incarcerated. I think that possibly, I'm hopeful, could lead to a break in the case. I recently heard a live stream by the father of Hunter, who said on the live stream that the TBI, I believe it was looking into the relationship between Candace and Hunter.
Good, because it's very inappropriate.
I found that very interesting because that made me think that maybe law enforcement is going to turn up the heat. And again, when I say that, it just means you should investigate any and all crimes that are uncovered surrounding a case. Mm-hmm. Just like in the Gabby Petito, Brian Laundrie situation, Brian Laundrie was initially charged with unauthorized use of an access device. They called it bank fraud, but that's what the actual charge in the law is. Basically using her credit card as he traveled cross country. So that bought them a charge so that then they could keep him held while they investigated other charges. But that, in my opinion, it's been done in the Corey Bigsby case. Honestly, it's done in most cases.
Look at Harmony Montgomery. Adam and Kayla are both in jail.
Exactly. This is not... this is usual practice. It's not unusual practice. It's very, very usual practice to charge crimes that somebody's committed, certainly when they're under investigation. So I don't know or understand why. However, I think we have to keep an open mind that it's somebody connected with the Welleses, not necessarily the Welleses. It could be somebody connected with the Welleses that went in and took that little girl.
Absolutely. It's got to tie to that property somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just, now the FBI card unit said there's no abduction.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what does that leave you with? I mean, if she wandered off, she would have been found. When kids wander off, I mean, they get found.
Yeah, it's always when you're in law enforcement investigating a case like this, so really any case, you have to look at the possibilities, and then you have to look at it as they disappear, as the possibilities disappear. For instance, she wandered off. That possibility has been taken off the plate if we are to believe that property has been properly searched. Mm-hmm. If we believe that, a 5-year-old would have been unable to go beyond where their property was.
Well, she supposedly had no shoes on. How far could she get? And they were combing all over that property.
And also, it doesn't fit with the story, right?
Nope.
Not necessarily that I believe that story, but the story is she went down in the basement. Not that she went and played outside or anything else. It was that she left Candace and Candace and doing the flowers because she wanted to go inside.
And on top of that, both Dawn and Candace have said she would never just wander off.
Mm-hmm. They both said that.
They've been adamant about it. They're selling the abduction story because they have to. Well, Jennifer, I've kept you for the hour. You said you had from 9 to 10. So we could sit here and talk to you all day, but you are a very, very busy lady. Thank you so much for coming on here. Everyone is so frustrated about this case. And so for you to come on and shed some light and give us a better understanding of what's going on, I can't tell you how much it's appreciated.
Yeah, or at least more to think about. And I appreciate the invitation. I'm always just so happy with all the people in social media that are keeping her at the forefront, because that is truly how I think someday she'll be found. I also want to thank your audience, because the questions posed were great, really
They're
good.
wonderful.
And I wish I had more answers, but hopefully I had a little bit of insight just for you all to think about as you continue to look at this case, as we all continue to look at this case.
Yep. And after this show, I'm going to probably have 50 more questions now. You've given us so much to think about.
All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you for the invitation. You all are amazing, and keep doing what you're doing.
You're amazing, and come back. We love chatting with you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks. Happy Valentine's Day. Man, guys, that was an amazing show. Is she not a great? She's over the top. I mean, we were very, very lucky to have her here. Very, very lucky. I got Kevin backstage. I'm going to have him help shut down the show. Hello, Kevin. We dropped you there for a minute.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that was great. I wanted to say, thank you to Jennifer. And she made a great point. The truth is the truth. It doesn't waver, it stays constant. And we've said that, and behavior speaks volumes. And the other thing, too, that she brought up was you got to lie to cover another lie. Pretty soon you start forgetting your lies. And by Don and Candace being separated, I think that is that's going to be a big thing.
Them being separated, and I was so happy that she shed light on the polygraph.
Yes.
There are so many people sold on it. And in every case, not just this one, people immediately say, oh, they need to give them a lie detector test. They need to give them a lie detector test. I've never really even cared about those.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and she brought up a great point. And, a lot of times it's just used as intimidation. Criminals, they, or people, I shouldn't say seasoned criminals because they probably know how it works. But the thing with the lie detector test is it's very intimidating. And sometimes it makes, people confess because, lie detector test. But we know there's been many lies for sure.
A ton, my friend.
Yep.
Well, this is a great show, my friend. I can't thank you enough for all you do for missing children and this channel, and just being there for all of us every day, Kevin.
You are more than welcome, and I love it. And I remember, if you got kids, give them a hug, tell them you love them, because you never know. If you don't have kids, tell a family member or members. If you don't have that, tell your pet. If you don't have that, then, tell yourself you're loved and you can show love.
Yep, especially on Valentine's Day, because Valentine's Day isn't just for boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, partners, whatever. It's for friends too, and you can do something nice for yourself. So I am going to start winding this down. You guys are absolutely amazing. I was so happy to have Jennifer on here today. And you guys are the best community and best chat on YouTube. Hands down. Hands down. Can't ever forget about the mod squad, because you guys are amazing. You make everybody feel welcome. They can kick their feet up and, talk and chat. And it's always a good show. But today was over the top. I can't thank Jennifer enough. But we are going to be back here tomorrow at 9 a.m., guys. So I hope everybody, you get your kitchen cleaned up from Super Bowl last night. Have a great Valentine's Day. And we will see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.